Thank you for inviting me here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of the presenters. But I'd like for you to play a piece that was very striking that tells the depth and the breadth of Black farmers. Thank you.
I lost my livelihood in farming. I couldn't farm. They took away the one thing that I really loved, and that was farming. That's what the USDA did.
He showed me a big tarp that had the words on it, "Nigger, go home."
The lack of commitment by too many people to not really caring whether we did justice or not.
Even as long as it's been, we've experienced discrimination for a very, very long time, and most people would have given up. To this date, I haven't given up, and I never will give up, until justice is served.
That's what my daddy would always say. He says I wasn't in trouble or anything. Everything was fine until I went up to defend my dad. And he says, what was I supposed to do? He says, I'm a man, and that's my daddy. I'm supposed to defend him.
He said, don't let USDA take my land. It was like anybody else, but just don't you let the land. And we've done that. Nobody else has taken it either, but for sure the USDA will never get it.
Quite frankly, I say that the United States Department of Agriculture murdered
them.
My mother and father and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
The number of acres lost by Black farmers are tremendous. Millions of acres we owned after slavery. And then we were reduced to this day to maybe 17 or 18,000 farmers and a small degree of land. What I want to say to you is that the present lawsuits that are brought against Black farmers by frivolous and racist individuals around the country will not stop our drive in the struggle for Black farmers. The income of Black farmers have drastically been reduced, and the amount of wealth that has been taken from Black farmers is tremendous, and it will be never again returned. What you would call reparations, we call it justice. What you have heard is only a part of why we do what we do, why you must do what you have to do in California to right the wrongs suffered by Black people. You call it reparations, we call it justice. Thank you, California Reparations Task Force, for inviting me here today and taking on, and we understand the daunting task that you have to right some of the wrongs for Black people in this country. I want to say that the Coalition of Minority Employees and the Justice for Black Farmer Group is honored to be here today, sending out a call, which you are sending out a call to your citizens. Again, I say, we call it justice. You call it reparations. Thank you, Ms. Moore, who heard a conversation talking about a letter that we sent to the Secretary of Agriculture in June 2 of 2021. If not for her seeing that tape, we wouldn't be here today. That letter and the testimony we submitted speaks to the same racism, sexism, and the retaliation and harassment that employees at the Department of Agriculture suffered, but also the pain and suffering of many farmers and employees. I'm sorry to say that things are not any better at USDA, and I'm sorry to say that it doesn't look like it's going to get any better under the times that we are faced. You have white farmers who own most of the land and get all the benefits from the land. They are the ones now bringing court cases around the country, saying that it's discriminatory to have debt relief for black farmers. When I experienced in my youth racism and sexism, it brought me to where I am today. And I'm sure that many of you all on this panel, that you have listened to your parents and you have experienced some of the same indignities that black farmers have suffered. You call it reparations. We call it justice. The reason why I'm here today is because I stand on the backs of pain and suffering of farmers and many other people in this country. If not for Dr. Tolson leading me to a book and a poem written by Robert Frost, Two Roads Diverge in a Yellow Wood, and I took the road less traveled by. I see what you all are doing in California is what needs to be done across this country. The courage of your governor and the courage of the people on this reparations committee to take on this daunting task and start by talking to other people about their pain and suffering. And thanks for including and getting an understanding of what black farmers have suffered, what women have suffered. We look at all the abuses that's going on in the country as it relates to sexual abuse, and we ignore what is going on at USDA in this nation. And that is because we've been failed by our leadership. We've been failed by our Congress. But we have faith, just like you all will have to have the faith and the strength as you work through this reparation issue with your citizens in California. The injustice they have received from your state and county, you have every right to do something about it. If not now, why? If not now, when? There must be accountability. There must be transparency. In order for a state and this nation to move forward with a sense of humanity and dignity. Once a nation that had a rating of 95 in the world in terms of democracy, it is now 83 in the rating and the world view. Melvin Van Peebles, actor, writer, producer, and more, wrote a play that I saw in my early years in New York. It was called Ain't Supposed to Die of Natural Death. It showed in its action a demonstration for rights and maybe even rioting. And then all of a sudden, money flowed down onto the stage, and the people went into slow motion. That is what's happening in this country. Our leaders and many of the people that are responsible for the pain and suffering of Black farmers are people that look like us, people that look like many of us. But we've come together as an organization, multiracial and multicultural, to stand up for the land loss, to stand up for the harassment, to stand up for the loss of wealth of Black farmers. We are sharing with you a culture of systemic racism at the U.S. Department of Agriculture that denies Black farmers their dignity, that denies Black farmers a right to farm, denies Black farmers the right to the same programs and services that white farmers get in this country. You call it reparations, that's needed. We call it justice. The internal wheels of justice have been and still is slow in some of the cases that exist and the ones that you face. That share, we're going to share with you. And in the paper that we presented was probably somewhat different than all the others. We don't have a lot of charts. We only talk about the pain and suffering. We talk about the lack of humanity, the lack of dignity and respect that goes on at the Department of Agriculture. We were told by Secretary Vilsaps, who is now Secretary, that what we were asking for Black farmers in our effort to fight for justice for them, that debt relief was unconstitutional. We see today that that self-fulfilling prophecy of Tom Vilsapp and his group with the filing of these frivolous and racist complaints around the country, yes, we see it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Those cases are frivolous that are brought against these farmers who are fighting for their dignity and respect in their land and their wealth. Black farmers and the lawsuits that are coming up in about a week or two in Tennessee will probably put, hopefully, a pin in what is going on in the lives of Black farmers. We thought that it was important that our group bring to the attention of the candidates running for president, both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren, we confronted with the fact that she thought and was told that the reason why black farmers are being discriminated against is because of heirs property. That's not true. People are lining up, by the way, with the money that's flowing out of Washington to benefit from the heirs property, while black farmers still today suffer. Cases not settled. I can't tell you the pain that I've felt with the number of black farmers that I've seen die, ill. Farmers passed on because they couldn't get the justice, because they could not continue to farm. They could not have a way of life like white farmers. That is very painful. But we went to Elizabeth Warren when she thought it was heirs property, and she sat down with us and her staff, and we were able to convince her, like we are still trying to convince the government, some of our leaders today, that the real reason that we have discrimination at the U.S. Department of Agriculture is because of the systemic discrimination at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That discrimination goes to the heart and to the heartland, where black farmers have to sit down and ask a racist county committee person or committee to give them the same benefits and services they give white farmers.
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Let me say this. I want to close by saying thank you for the work that you have in front of you. And I want to remind you of what you saw when my presentation started. I thank you very much, but I'd like to use my last few seconds of putting on the tape that you saw in the beginning.
I lost my livelihood in farming. I couldn't farm. They took away the one thing that I really loved, and that was farming. That's what the USDA did.
He showed me a big tarp that had the words on it, "Nigger, go home."
The lack of commitment by too many people to not really caring whether we did justice or not.
Even as long as it's been, we've experienced discrimination for a very, very long time, and most people would have given up. To this date, I haven't given up, and I never will give up, until justice is served.
That's what my daddy would always say. He says I wasn't in trouble or anything. Everything was fine until I went up to defend my dad. And he says, what was I supposed to do? He says, I'm a man, and that's my daddy. I'm supposed to defend him.
He said, don't let USDA take my land. It was like anybody else, but just don't chew at the land. And we've done that. Nobody else has taken it either, but for sure the USDA will never get it.
Quite frankly, I say that the United States Department of Agriculture murdered
them.
My mother and father and my brother.
Mm-hmm.